Imagine this, in one moment, your life stops. But instead of nothingness, you see an amazing sight. A city brighter than the sun, with streets made of pure gold and light that fills everything. What if this is the New Jerusalem? What if this is what God has prepared for us? Subscribe to our channel now, so you don't miss the most incredible stories about faith, hope, and life after death. Watch this video to the end to discover what God showed John after he died. This story could change your life. For John, the ocean was always a place of peace. The sound of the waves, the salty air, and the endless water gave him a sense of freedom. On this day, like many others, he went to his favorite beach, bringing his scuba gear. But he never imagined that this day would change his life forever. The ocean was calm and still. The surface of the water reflected the sunlight like a mirror. John carefully checked his gear, took a deep breath, and with a light push, dove into the water. The underwater world was full of life. Corals glowed in bright colors, and schools of fish moved together in patterns of light and shadow. John swam slowly, taking in the beauty around him. It felt like he had entered another world, far from the noise and worries of everyday life. But suddenly, things changed. The gentle current turned into a strong force, pulling him downward into the deep, dark water. Panic rushed over him. His breathing sped up, and he tried to grab onto something, anything, but there was nothing except water. The pull dragged him deeper and deeper. The sunlight above faded, and darkness surrounded him. The cold water wrapped around his body, and everything he knew about safe diving felt useless. Is this the end? John thought. His lungs burned for air, and he felt hope slipping away. Suddenly, everything went quiet. The water no longer felt like a threat. John stopped struggling and felt a strange sense of weightlessness, as if his body wasn't even there. The thick darkness began to disappear, replaced by a warm, golden light. Fear melted away, and a deep sense of peace filled him. This didn't feel like dying the way people describe it. It felt more like waking up. John realized that this was only the beginning of a new journey. When the golden light surrounded John completely, time seemed to slow down. This light wasn't just bright, it was warm, like the morning sun on your face. It didn't hurt his eyes, but felt like it was calling him, inviting him home. Ahead of him, he saw a tunnel. The walls shimmered with soft golden colors, and the air was filled with music. It wasn't like any music John had heard before. It felt like it was playing directly in his soul, calming and healing him. With each step forward, John felt lighter, as if all the worries and burdens of his life were falling away. He didn't think about what he had left behind. Fear, doubt, and sadness faded, replaced by a feeling of belonging to something much greater. As he walked further, the light became brighter. But it wasn't harsh or blinding like artificial light. It felt alive and warm, as if it came from the Creator himself. Then, John felt a gentle touch, not on his skin but in his soul. It felt like a soft breeze, filling him with peace. It wasn't a voice, but he felt deeply called to move forward. At the end of the tunnel was a place shining with the brightest light. It reminded him of the first light of dawn, full of promise and hope. John couldn't yet see what was there, but he knew he had to keep going. There was no fear in him now, only joy and excitement. What's waiting for me, he wondered, not with worry but with happiness, like a child knowing something amazing was ahead. Each step felt easy, and with each one, the music grew louder, and the light became stronger. John felt as though he was becoming part of the light and the music. This wasn't just a journey, it was the start of something incredible, something far beyond anything he could imagine. Finally, he took the last step. The light surrounded him completely, and the most amazing sight opened before his eyes. When John stepped out of the tunnel, he froze in awe. Before him was a city like no other, a city that shined as brightly as the sun on a clear day, but its light didn't hurt or blind. Instead, the light surrounded everything, reaching into his very soul and filling him with peace. The city walls rose high, made of jasper that sparkled like a precious gem. John marveled at how something so solid and strong could also appear soft and alive. The gates were made of giant pearls, smooth and perfect, as though crafted by God himself. The streets were made of gold, but not like the gold he had seen on earth. This gold was so pure it looked like clear glass, allowing the light to flow through it. When John looked down, it felt as if he was walking on light itself, not just the surface. At the center of the city stood a throne, radiating the brightest light of all. John somehow knew that this throne was the source of the city's glow. Flowing from the throne was the river of life, its water crystal clear and sparkling like diamonds. The sound of the river wasn't just soothing, it felt like a song, one that reached deep into his heart, bringing healing and comfort. On either side of the river grew trees John had never seen before. Their leaves gave off a soft glow, like starlight. He realized these were the trees of life. Their fruit shone like jewels, and the air around them smelled like a mix of home and something completely new. Looking around, John saw people. They didn't speak, but their faces radiated pure joy. This wasn't just happiness, it was complete, unshakable peace, the kind he had never seen on earth. They moved towards the river and the throne, their steps filled with purpose and serenity. The sky above the city was unlike anything John had ever seen. It wasn't blue or gray like the sky on earth. Instead, it shimmered with gold, soft purple, and silver, as though reflecting the light of God himself. There was no sun or moon, but John knew the light came from the Creator. Tears began to stream down John's face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. He was standing in the place so many on earth thought was just a myth. But now he knew it was real. This was the New Jerusalem, the city promised by God. In that moment, John understood that all his fears, doubts, and pain had a purpose. Every hardship had led him to this place, this moment. John stood in silence, but it wasn't empty. The light from the throne surrounded him, filling him with warmth and peace. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a presence he couldn't explain. He knew without a doubt that God was there. His heart was filled with awe, but not fear. It felt like coming home after a long journey, a place where he had always been expected and welcomed. John wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, he felt the light and unconditional love filling every part of him. And then, he heard a voice. It wasn't like any human voice. It was soft yet powerful, like the whisper of wind and the roar of thunder combined. It didn't come from outside but seemed to rise from within him, touching both his mind and soul. John, the voice said, and his name sounded like it had been known and cherished since the beginning of time. It wasn't just a name, it was a recognition of his existence, of everything he was. "You have always been mine," the voice continued. These words pierced deep into his soul, and for the first time, John felt truly known and loved, even in the moments when he doubted himself. "I have shown you this place so you may know what I have prepared for those who believe. Your life has not been easy, but I have always been with you, even when you could not see me." Tears rolled down John's face again, but they were tears of gratitude. Each word spoken by God filled his soul with peace and strength. "Now, I ask you to return," the voice said gently. "Tell others what you have seen. Tell them about my love and my promise. People need to know this place is real, that there is a life without pain, tears, or fear waiting for them. John wanted to respond, but instead of words, he felt his heart answer. He couldn't describe it, but he knew he had been given a purpose. His journey was not over, it was only beginning. The voice grew quieter, but God's presence remained. John knew he would never be the same. The light around John began to fade, not suddenly but gently, like a loving goodbye. He felt the warmth being replaced by cool air, and he became aware of his body again. He didn't want to leave. Every part of him longed to stay in this place, filled with love and peace. But he knew it wasn't time for him yet. God had given him a mission, and he needed to fulfill it. Suddenly, John felt weight return to his body. It was strange and heavy after the lightness he had experienced. He became aware of sounds, at first distant and muffled, then clearer. He heard the splash of waves, voices, and the wail of a siren. He took a deep breath, his lungs filling with air, and opened his eyes. At first, everything was blurry, but soon he saw the sky above him. He was lying on the beach, surrounded by people. A rescue worker knelt beside him, his face a mix of concern and relief. "You're awake," he said with a faint smile. John tried to speak, but his voice was weak. He managed to whisper, "I saw the light." The people around him looked confused, but for John, those words carried a deeper meaning. His body felt heavy, but his soul felt light. He knew he had experienced something extraordinary, and now he needed to understand it. Looking up at the sky, where clouds moved slowly over the ocean, he realized how miraculous every breath and every moment of life truly was. He understood that this second chance was a gift, and he had to use it wisely. John returned to his normal life, but it never felt the same again. Every time he looked at the sky or listened to the sound of the ocean waves, he remembered the light, the city, and God's words. That experience became a part of him, changing how he saw everything about life, death, and faith. He knew he had to fulfill the mission God had given him. He began sharing his story, first with family and close friends, then with strangers who crossed his path. It didn't matter if they were believers or skeptics, John wanted everyone to hear what he had seen and felt. The New Jerusalem isn't just a dream, he would say. It's real. It's the place God has prepared for all of us. A place with no pain, no tears, and no fear. It's our true home, waiting for us. But John didn't just tell his story, he inspired people. There was something in his voice, in the way he spoke, that carried a truth no one could ignore. His eyes seemed to glow with light, as if a piece of that heavenly city still lived within him. "You are not alone," John would tell people. "Even when you think God is far away, He is always close. His love never ends, and all He asks is for you to believe. He's waiting for you, just as He waited for me." Every morning, John began his day with a prayer, thanking God for another chance to live. He saw his life not as a series of random events but as part of a much bigger plan. He now lived with purpose, to bring hope and light to others. "I can't forget what I saw," he often said. "But even more, I can't forget what I felt." God's love, His forgiveness, and His promise give meaning to every moment of life. People who heard John's story often asked him questions. "How can we get to that place? What do we need to do?" John's answer was simple but heartfelt. Believe. Love. Be kind to others. And never doubt that God loves you, even when you don't feel it yourself. Every evening, as John watched the sunset, he whispered quietly, "I will return there." It wasn't just a hope or a dream, it was a certainty that filled his heart with peace and joy. If this story touched you, please give it a like to help us share inspiring messages like this with more people. Write in the comments what you think about God's promises and how they've impacted your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more inspiring stories that make you reflect on faith, hope, and the meaning of life. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in the next video.